And I said, well, no, I think I'm going to go play football at Northwestern. And he said, Northwestern in the Big Ten? This is Joe Restic. Yeah. And I said, yeah. And he said, wait here a minute. And then he went back and brought down someone from the admissions office, and I sat there and filled out my admissions form and got accepted to Harvard. And he said, hey, we want to offer you a job, and congratulations, you've done a great interview, and we're excited to have you on board. But I want to tell you, I don't ever want to see you in that suit again.
Hi, this is Jim Tressel, and we're here for another episode of It's All About the Team. And we're so blessed today to have a dear friend, Eric Spiegel, who I've gotten to know over the last 10 years or so, as he's been a global trustee at the Youngstown State University, but that's the least of what he's done in his career. And so, Eric, good to have you with us.
Jim, I'm very excited to be here, especially down in the famous memorabilia basement. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of fun, and that way, if the viewers don't enjoy what we're talking about, they can get distracted and look at the other stuff on the thing. But it's been a lot of fun talking about the topic of team. You and I both spent our whole lives, trying to build teams. You hear a lot of discussion about leadership, and there's a lot of information out there how one can grow in their leadership. But growing as a teammate, team member, team leader, building a team, to me is my passion, and so I appreciate you coming on. And so for our viewers and listeners, Eric Spiegel, Youngstown, Ohio guy, wonderful family, blessed to go on and play football at Harvard and graduate from Harvard and go out into the business world. And somewhere in there, we'll let you talk about it. You found time to get your MBA at Dartmouth while you were, beginning your career, and you advanced through a number of companies, which we'll let you talk about each of those. And probably your crowning jewel is the fact that our academic advisor at Youngstown State University, Doreen Anderson, became your bride, and you have a wonderful family, and you've kind of gone full circle. And after being all over the world and leading giant teams, I've spent the last few years trying to help others build their teams and help others reach their goals. And so talk to us a little bit about from Youngstown through today.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Youngstown is such a great place to be from and such a great place to grow up. My one grandfather immigrated from Germany. The other one's my great-grandfather immigrated from Germany. They both kind of wound their way through Pennsylvania, ended up in Youngstown. Both of them worked in the steel mills. And my dad, because of personal things that happened in his family, had to drop out of high school, went to East High School, was a big-time football player in high school.
Golden Bear.
But he had to drop out and start working at an early age. So I grew up in a family where everybody worked, everyone was hardworking, sort of strong middle-class values. And my dad had a sporting goods store, he had a construction company, he owned and developed real estate. But his big thing was, hey, study hard, you're going to be a big kid, and the best way to get into college, into a good college, and have it paid for is to play football, get a scholarship, but you got to have the grades. So my dad, who never finished high school, his big thing with myself and my two other brothers and my sister was, I'm not going to make you go out and work. If you need to go out on a date, you need a little money, I'll get you the money. But you're going to study hard, and you're going to play sports, and you're going to develop yourself, and you're going to be a great team. But my dad was a football coach for 20-some years at Sacred Heart Parochial School.
Oh, yeah.
And so he always instilled in us, if you go out for the team, you're staying on the team, you're committed to the team, you're going to help make them successful, and that's going to make you successful. And so I grew up understanding the concept of a team and how important that was. But my dad also said, hey, Youngstown is going through troubled times. The steel mills were closing in the 70s when I was going through high school. And he said, best for you to, get a scholarship and go away somewhere. And it's a big world out there. Kind of make your life for yourself. And I actually signed my football scholarship with Northwestern.
Wow.
And and I was all set to go there. And John Pont was the head football coach there. Changed my life. At the end, I was meeting with him. He said, "Eric, we're really excited to have you here. You've got great grades and board scores, and I know you'll be successful. But you want to be in engineering, and to be in the engineering program, we're probably going to redshirt you for a year, and and let you develop, and you'll have to come to school in the summer and those kind of things." And he said, "With your grades and everything, did you ever think about going to the Ivies?" And I said, "Yeah, but my guidance counselor told me they're expensive. They're for kids with a lot of money." And he said, "Well, my brother, Richie Pont, is the backfield coach at Yale. Coached Dick Geron, coached Calvin Hill." And he said, "I know you've used up all your visits, but why don't you just go out and see him?" So I did. Turns out I had a great experience there, and I was like, "Wow, this could really be a big deal." And but I said, "Well, that's New Haven, that's Yale. Maybe I should go see a couple of those." So my dad wired me some money, and I drove to Princeton, went to Harvard, went to Dartmouth. When I got to Harvard, they sort of said to me, "Eric, we sent you all these letters, but you never returned any of them." This is before the days when they were really sophisticated recruiting,
right,
in the mid-'70s, right? Yep. They said, "We sent you letters. We heard you were a good football player, but we think we can get you into one of the prep schools and maybe find a scholarship for you. You could do a year of prep and then come to Harvard, because we've already." This was March or something of my senior year. They'd already done their acceptances, and I said, "Well, no, I think I'm going to go play football at Northwestern." And he said, "Northwestern in the Big Ten? This is Joe Restick." Yeah. And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Wait here a minute." And then he went back and brought down someone from the admissions office, and I sat there and filled out my admissions form and got accepted to Harvard. So I said, "Okay, I've got to do that." Even though they don't have football scholarships, I did get some academic scholarship money and things, and we had to pay a little. I had to take out a loan and do work study and all that. But that really was something that totally changed my life. And I always look back. I wrote a couple of letters to John Pont before he died about what a big change that made in my life, that he would help me, even though I was going to be going to play football for him. So it was a great thing for.
So how about this? 2 of our last podcast guests, you and Howie Long, were impacted by Joe Restick.
Yes.
With Joe Restick's son getting Howie a chance to replace someone in the blue-gray game. He wasn't even being looked at by the NFL.
Yes.
He got replaced, got to go to the blue-gray game and was the MVP, and his life changed. So one doesn't know who all is going to make a difference in their lives. But Joe Restick comes up twice in a row.
Yeah, yeah. And Howie Long grew up tough. He was in trouble a couple times.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway.
Yep.
But so, I came out of Harvard, played football there, had a great experience, got a job in a management consulting firm, which was a small firm back then that grew into a bigger firm. It's now part of Oliver Wyman. But went to work there for a couple of years, and used my economics degree, and knew I wanted to go back and get my MBA. One of the partners said, "Hey, Eric, I just took a job as the head of strategy for Brown Bavaria, a big Swiss company. Why don't you come over to Switzerland with me, be on my strategy team?" So I said, "Wow, a chance to go work internationally. This will be a great opportunity." So I went over there, worked for about a year, came back, and eventually went to the Dartmouth Tuck School. And when I came out, I knew I really liked consulting. I'd worked in a big company for a year, but I really knew I wanted to get more training, more development, get apprenticed kind of in how to think through business issues and business problems, and consulting firms are really good for that. And so when I came out, out of Tuck, I went to work for Booz Allen Hamilton, which at the time was, I think, the second largest consulting firm.
And what year was that?
That was 1987.
So Doreen's about ready to come in the picture.
She actually came in about a year before that.
Okay.
I graduated in 1980, worked for 3 years in consulting, then went to work in Switzerland for a year or so, came back, did one more year in consulting. So in 1985, I was heading out to business school, came home to visit my mom, and ended up, she belonged to the Scandinavian Spa on 224. That went out and worked out one day, and turns out one of my buddies was there, and he said, "Hey, a bunch of the Youngstown State football players are working out here." And so I went back and met a couple of them, and I saw Doreen over there where they were showing her how to lift some weights. And I said, "Who's the woman over there lifting weights with the team?" He said, "Oh, she's our new athletic academic advisor. Just came down from Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin." And so he introduced me, and I came up to her later that afternoon and said, "I'm from Youngstown. I hear you're new here. How about if I go out and show you the town?" And
That's a good line, huh?
and she accepted. It was great.
Wow.
And I picked her up that night, and we started dating, and we dated all the way through my 2 years of business school. And then when I came out and worked for Booz Allen, I decided if I don't go to California now, I'll never go to California. Went to California with Booz Allen Hamilton, and we dated for another year and a half and then got married. I think you were at our wedding.
Wow. Yeah.
She was working with you
Yeah,
then.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And then from there, stayed with Booz Allen for 24 years. Lived in San Francisco, then to Dallas, then to Houston, where I ran our Texas office. And then they asked me to go run Asia Pacific, so we moved to Tokyo. Lived in Tokyo for 4 years. And then after 4 years there, they wanted me to move back to headquarters for Booz Allen in Washington, D.C. Moved back there for about 4 or 5 years before we sold half the company to a large private equity firm, Carlyle. And at that point I said, it's time. I've kind of done everything I want to do in consulting. It's time to maybe look for something, get into a company and help run something. And that's when I got searched and recruited by Siemens. Went there to become the CEO for the U.S. For about 7 years, and then retired from there, and ended up going to work part-time, do advising work in private equity and venture capital and things for the past 6-7 years. And that's also the time when I started to say, okay, I want to start giving back. I want to get involved. I have more time now. I want to get involved in some other activities. Around that time, you asked me to come join the board at Youngstown State, and I also joined the board at Rollins College, where my kids went to college, and I'm on the board of Ford Cedar. I've been on the board of Ford Cedar for about 20 years. We just had our big gala went to the White House and things last weekend, and I'm also on the board of Sarasota Memorial Foundation, which is important to Doreen and I, and we're kind of giving back, particularly to cancer and things. So that's been very exciting. So. I'm kind of on a lot of different teams now. I'm not running anything, but I'm trying to give back and make some other things better, make some other areas better. So
well, and that's what we hope to do with our podcast, is to be able to appeal to people who are all different types of team members, all different types of teams, always beginning with that family team. So you were all over the place as you were building your team, at home, Team Spiegel. Where all were the kids born? Yeah.
My daughter Jessica was born in Dallas, and my son Alan was born in Houston.
Okay.
And then they spent 4 years when they were very young over in Tokyo.
Wow.
Which was a great experience.
Yeah.
And then Washington, D.C. But, when I got married, when Doreen and I got married, we sort of agreed, hey, my job's going to take me to a lot of different places. I don't even know where it's going to take me, but I've already been over to Switzerland, and I know I want to spend time in other parts of the world, and this job, naturally, consulting takes you to many different places. So I need someone who's going to really really work with me, so that I can be successful and you can be successful. And so she decided, I'll do some not-for-profit things in the areas where we live, but I'm going to really dedicate my time to making sure our kids are raised the right way and have a great education and a great experience. And so that's how we worked our team.
Yep.
And it's worked very well. And then she loved getting involved in a lot of outside activities that I then got involved in. And so we were able to kind of nurture that side of our giving back together. She's very active in places like Ford Cedar and Sarasota and things like that. So
that's the key to any team, right? Everyone's willingness to play a role on behalf of the team and then serve others. And so if you think back to playing football at Harvard, Coach Restick, great teammates, what do you think you learned about team there?
I think the big thing was, unlike a lot of colleges, college football programs, everyone who was there was playing because they wanted to play. I mean, they absolutely wanted to play. There was no money tied to it.
Right.
So, when you started out, I think that freshman year, back when I went there as a freshman, freshmen had to play freshman football in the 70s. We had over 100 kids out for freshman football. I mean, everyone who played high school football came out for football thinking I could play college football. By the time I graduated, I think there were 15 of us
Right.
left on the team. But those were 15 people who were really contributing to the team, right? So pretty quickly, I built a network of people who I know really loved football and really wanted to play football and wanted to make the team a success. And, all of us knew we weren't going to go play pro football. So it really quickly becomes all about how do we have the best experience? How do we have the best team? And I remember my sophomore year, I had played tight end in high school, and I really wanted to play tight end there. And they said, Eric, we really only have 2 tackles. We need another tackle. Would you be willing to step in and play tackle? And I said, yeah, if it gets me some playing time and helps the team, I'm all about doing that. Maybe I'll get back. And then, of course, over the next 3 years, I gained about 75 pounds and became the left tackle.
Never to see tight end again.
Never saw tight end again.
But that's what team members do.
And I think that's one of the things I've learned about teams, that if you do the right thing for the team, in the long run, it's also usually going to be the right thing for you. Those two things go together in my mind. And that's what I always talk to younger people about when they're becoming part of a team or starting out in their careers. Do the right thing for the organization you're part of, do the right thing for the teams that you're part of, and they'll do right by you. Yeah. You don't have to be the person who's always trying to get credit for everything. People know who does the work and who's the best, who are the people that they like to turn to on the team that they can count on, that are going to do the right thing. That becomes pretty evident to people pretty quickly. So I've always found those two things are just simpatico in my mind, and I think that's a good lesson for people.
Well, and the greatest value that playing a part of a group activity, I don't care if it's a football team or a symphony or any other kind of team, is growing to understand the importance of becoming a good team member. That's even more valuable than your compensation. And even coaching at Ohio State, we would say to the guys, yeah, I know you all want to go to the NFL. I got that. You all want to make money. That's great.
Right.
But the value you're going to gain from this experience for the rest of your life, whether it's building your team at home or building your team in your community or whatever, is going to far outlive that compensation.
Yeah.
And that's the value of getting involved in a group activity.
Yeah.
I'd like to give a special thanks to Sam and Karen Cavelli and the entire Cavelli Enterprises family. No one believes in the concept of team and the importance of team any more than the Cavelli family. The impact that they have made in our valley, in our region, in our entire state. The Cavelli name is all over the YSU campus. It's all over the Ohio State campus. They are Penguins, they're Buckeyes, they're believers in the importance of team. Thanks so much. We know that you know it's all about the team.
It's interesting talking about the team and being a good teammate, because there are no courses you take in school,
right,
that say here's what it takes to be a good teammate, right?
Yep.
And every job description you look at these days, one of the things it says on there is ability to work in teams,
yep,
or being a good teammate, but it never says much more than that.
Right.
And you often wonder what are people looking for on your resume when they interview you that demonstrates that you can be a really good teammate. I look back on my career, I started learning it early on from my parents, and particularly from my dad, who had been a coach, who always reinforced the importance of being part of the team and helping the team in any way you can and being successful and things like that. But also just being a good teammate. When someone's down, how do you pick them up? There's more than just, doing the best you can for the team. It's also helping your teammates and those things. And if you have a good coach, they do that. Sometimes the coaches really emphasize that. Some coaches don't. In school, you can learn that from teachers, because you're often thrown into groups where your team has to make a presentation. Some of those aren't long-term things, but they happen over a short period. Can you get into a small group and spend an hour and produce something as a team and not worry about who's getting credit for putting what together, and can you figure out quickly on a team who's good at what and how do you do that? And I learned over the years in consulting, consulting teams, projects are usually just a few months long, most of them. Most of them have less than 10 people on the team. They often involve people from your company, but also the client's company. And getting a group of people who've never worked together, maybe the people in the company have worked together once or twice, and maybe the people on your team have worked together once, but really most of the team don't know each other. But you usually have a very significant objective that has to be achieved in a period of months.
Yeah.
Right? And so you've got to figure out, how do I get these people to work together as a team? And so as I grew in my career and became a partner, that was one of the big things I focused on, was how do I make sure I've got the right people on the team, they understand what the objective is, they get to know each other's strengths and weaknesses and how they can support each other, because we need to work fast and we can't spend time haggling over who's doing what and who's getting credit. If the team meets their objective, everyone's going to be a big winner here. The company's going to be a big winner. Our firm's going to be a big winner, et cetera. So you learn pretty quickly how to recognize what you have on the team. And I've learned over time that there are certain things that you have to have on the team. Not everyone is going to have all of those things, but you need to have them on the team, and for them to be able to gel and work together. Otherwise, for example, if you have 10 people with huge egos, that becomes a problem right away. The team, they don't trust each other, et cetera, right? So you need to figure out, okay, tell people, hey, you got to check your ego at the door here. This isn't about you. It's about getting the company, solving this issue that the company has, and getting from point A to point B. And then, you want to make sure that you've got people who are hardworking, have a lot of desire, sort of type A personalities who are going to go out there and get things done. And when something isn't getting done, they're going to take it on, they're going to do it. I mean, I've learned over the years, one of the things I loved about being in consulting, most of the people you hired, you didn't have to tell them you have to work 80 hours a week or 90 hours a week.
Right.
They were going to work 80 or 90 hours a week whether you told them or not.
Yep.
And those people you could recognize pretty quickly. They're going to do what it takes to make the project successful, to make the team successful. And so the more of those kind of people you can have on a team, and you need people that are bright and intelligent, but people who are hardworking and know how to work with people, and those kind of people, having those kind of people on a team is just as critical as having 3 rocket scientists, right? And so
that's a good lesson right now for so many of my friends from college football. I talk with them, and I always tease that I have a large non-paid consulting firm where I spend a lot of time talking to these guys who are all over the country, and how we were spoiled in athletics because we had such a long time to build that team and culture. You had them there they were young, and then you get to really spend a lot of time with them, and as they became older, they became maybe a little bit more in the leadership end of things, and my colleagues are saying now, gosh, our roster changes so fast with this portal and this NIL, and now we have, it used to be everyone was broke, and now, there's some guys in the locker room that are driving Bentleys or, whatever, and, it's kind of crazy, and it's a good lesson for them that a consulting firm has to go in there and, in a month's standpoint, making very difficult decisions, very impactful. There is a scoreboard, right? There's balance sheets and there's stock prices, and to me that's intriguing. Now I know you're probably working with a little older person than my colleagues working with 18 to 22-year-olds, but that ability. We used to always say, if we could just spend enough time together, we'll appreciate each other, and the egos will fall aside, and we'll know that left guard is just as important as that star quarterback or whatever. But man, when you go in there with a consulting firm, and it's got to happen like that, that might be who these coaches need to call rather than me. I always had 4 years to build a team. But it's probably different.
I think like, as you're saying, on a football team, at least in the old days, you had people coming in, they were there for 4 years or maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
And nowadays, who knows with the transfer portal and things, but you had time to work and develop and understand people's strengths and weaknesses. Now, in consulting, you have teams put together to do assignments, but on the other hand, you also get to work over time with a lot of these people who might be in your office or in your group or whatever.
I see.
So when I started out, I needed a lot of mentorship, and this is again part of being a member of a practice or a team, which is really understanding that I have a lot to learn. It's not in a book anywhere. Mm-hmm. You're not going to learn to be a strategy consultant in a book. Yeah, there are lots of books written about it, but that's not going to, you need people who are going to work with you and teach you. Even things like, this is a kind of a funny story. When I first interviewed for my first job in consulting, I had done a bunch of interviews that week at Harvard, and I only had one suit. And I took it into the cleaner on Friday night because I had more interviews on Monday. And on Saturday, I got called up by one of the firms, and they wanted to interview me. They said, well, get in a taxi and come on out to the offices in Boston. And I said, I don't have a suit. So I went around, and I was one of the biggest guys in
Yeah,
school.
right.
So there really weren't a lot of suits.
Right.
And I had an old suit in my closet that was like, I would say this color, pinkish red. That I, kind of a good Youngstown suit. Used to wear with a white tie. And I said, that's all I got. So I showed up at this meeting at this big time consulting firm with all of these other people from MIT and Harvard and everything sitting around the room. And I came in, they're all in dark suits, and, and I come in this pink suit. At the end of the day, I got a job offer, and it was a guy from Cleveland, a partner from Cleveland. He said, Eric, come on in here. And he came in, he said, hey, we want to offer you a job, and congratulations, you've done a great interview, and we're excited to have you on board. But I want to tell you, I don't ever want to see you in that suit again. And he wrote me a check, and he said, this is part of your signing bonus you're going to get next year, but I want you to go down to Brooks Brothers. I want you to buy a blue serge suit. I want you to buy a gray suit. I want you to get 5 or 6 button-down white and blue shirts, and I want you to buy a few rep ties. And that's what you're going to wear when you come to work here. Now, a lot of people might have taken affront to that, but I was being apprenticed.
Right.
I was being mentored.
Yep.
This is, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't want you to put yourself in a bad place. I know you're from Youngstown. I'm from Cleveland. I didn't know any better. And so, this is what if you're going to work in Boston or New York, this is what you have to wear. And he was my mentor for the next 3 or 4 years when I was there. He was great to me and was always giving me advice about things like that. And so that's part of learning how to be a good member of a team too, knowing someone on your team needs help, and being willing sometimes to have the tough discussion with someone on your team that not always about their dress or whatever, but could be about things they said in the meeting, and learning how to present in a meeting. When I was very young, they would say, Eric, we're going to go into this, and you're going to do the second part of the presentation to the board of directors of this big company. I was like 24 years old. And he said, come in and rehearse it with me, and let's go through it. You're going to go do it. And afterwards, they come in and say, okay, you did this well, you did this well. Right. You did too much of this, you did too little of that. So we're going to give you the next chance, but I want you to keep working on those things until you get, But that's what I mean. It was he was making the team better, but he was making me better. And as I got better, then I could move up to the next level in the company, and I could start mentoring and coaching people below me. So I think that's the one thing about being a good team member is there's a lot more to it than just saying, hey, I'm going to work as hard as I can to make the team successful. Can be a lot of different aspects that makes the team better. And
it's good listening on both ends of it. The leader listening to finding out what's important to the new 24-year-old team member, and what is important and what they need to learn and so forth, and then the young team member being willing to listen. Listening may be one of the biggest tools that we need, and that awareness, and every day, learning, what do I need to do to make this team better? And what do I need to do to make the teammates better? And so one thing was rolling through my head was, so you're in Switzerland, Japan, Germany. Anything you gleaned from different cultures as to how they built teams?
Yeah, when I went to Japan, Japan is probably the best professional experience of my career, maybe one of the top personal experiences, because the way they do business over there is much different. And when I came over, they will trust you, they will respect you, but they never, on a lot of in the office and on the teams and the projects and things, you never really felt like they were letting you in all the way. And then I learned that, they like to do things a little slower. They like to get to know you better. They like to have a lot of conversations outside of the project and outside of the work, to tell you, to kind of help nurture you along in terms of how to work in a Japanese environment. A lot of the decisions in Japan, it's sort of a joke, but it's true, get made before the meeting, because nobody wants to be embarrassed in the meeting. The meeting will go very smoothly. All the tough discussions will happen outside of the meeting. And then when you get to the meeting, everyone's already in agreement, and you just kind of go through the presentation. In a lot of cases, it was like that. So I sort of learned a little bit about how to be, for example, there, you don't want to criticize someone who's a member of the team, even if it's helpful criticism, even if it's, I think I read through your report. I think we need to do more of this and more of this, and you didn't do this. Let's make those changes. Sometimes they would construe that as, very negative and embarrassing them in front of the group. So you had to be careful what you kind of said in the group and as the team. And if you had a teammate someone on the team who wasn't working, you had to really be very delicate about how you handle that. In the U.S. or places like Germany, people are much more direct. Hey, this isn't working. It's not working for you. It's not working for me. We've got to get someone else in here and get this done.
Right.
And as you know, and the same thing in coaching. Hey, if someone's not cutting it on the field, we got to put someone else in the game, and because we got to do what's right for the team. Over there, you've got to handle those things a little bit more delicately. So, and things like firing people and terminating people just doesn't happen very often over there. So there's a whole different process.
So the sensitivity part of dealing with them.
Because it's very much a shame-based society, and I worked on one of the most famous projects over there, Nissan, the big car company. The Carlos Ghosn came over from Renault. Same time we came over there, and he came over. They were losing $5 or $6 billion a year, and he came over to do what they call the Nissan Revival Plan, a big transformation of the company. And we won a big piece of consulting helping out. So I got to spend quite a bit of time over 3 or 4 years with Carlos Ghosn. And, a lot of people were telling him he needed to do things the Japanese way, which would, of course, take a lot longer. And he said, I really don't have that time. We've got to move faster. So I'm going to use people like you in the consulting world and other people to help me drive that change much faster down in the organization, because I just can't do it from the top down and things. So, so those I've learned. And even when I went to Siemens, I didn't know anybody there. The U.S. is mostly people born and raised in the U.S., but a lot of international people and a lot of people from Germany. And so, you find out a lot of the same things work there. You've got to build trust. And one of the first things I did when I came to Siemens, I had been given objectives by the board. Here's 4 or 5 things we want to see happen in the U.S. that we're not seeing. It's our biggest market, but it's not growing fast enough. We're not taking advantage of all the capabilities we have working together at certain customers and things. And we got to get that kind of. We need the U.S. to be working more like an effective team than 30 different businesses, right? And so when I went on what was called a listening tour. I said, I'm not going to go and tell people I know the answer, because I don't know the answer.
Right.
But I went around to all the major businesses, spent like 3 months just on the road, getting to meet all the people, giving talks at all the plants. But I didn't give answers. I just said, I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn. I understand this is what you do here. This is what's working well. This is what's not working. And I would just listen. And then I came back, and what I realized at the time, there really was no team across all these businesses. They were silos. And there was a corporate team, but all the business units also reported back to somebody in Germany, or they could be headquartered somewhere else. But the point was didn't really feel like they were part of the U.S. team. And so one of the first things I did was say, okay, we're gonna pick a leader from each of these major businesses, the divisions, 8 or 10 of them, and we're gonna have them and the corporate team, the head of finance and the head of human resources, and we're gonna put together a team. But I have to give them an incentive to want to do that. Why would you want to be part of the team? I've got my job, and my boss wants me to do A and B and C and D. Right. Why do I want to screw around with the Spiegel guy who's come in? And so what we did coming out of listening to her, we also did a bunch of analysis to say, hey, here's what's working, here's what's not working in the U.S., and here's where the big opportunities are. So we crafted sort of 7 or 8 initiatives coming out of that, of which every business had a piece of. They weren't all involved in every initiative, but they were all involved in at least 2 or 3 of the initiatives. One of which, for example, was we did a little bit of work with the federal government, but it was a huge multi-billion-dollar opportunity. We were doing a couple $100 million. There was a bigger opportunity there, benefited almost every single business, could sell more into the federal government, whether it was healthcare or building automation, building technologies, et cetera. And so we put together these initiatives. We asked each of the teams to put people in there. We set an objective. How much money are we going to invest? What's the profit we can bring in over the next X number of years? Took it to the board in Germany, got them to sign off on it. And now I had a reason to get the team together 4 or 5 times a year to talk about each of the initiatives. And then we'd do phone calls, and people would give weekly updates, and we'd have metrics. this one we said we were going to sell this much by these dates. Where are we? Are we ahead or behind? Is it a green light, a red light, a yellow light? And if it is, why isn't it? Oh, someone's not playing ball. This group isn't really helping. They've kind of checked out. Okay, then I'd have to get on the phone with the head of the business and say, hey, look, we all signed up to do this. You're a part of this initiative. You're part of this team. What can I do to get you more excited and get your people on here? And one of the things I also learned is, you got to be careful about using your absolute positional power. And I see a lot of people try to get everything done with their positional power, and after a while that kind of falls flat.
Right.
You're better off if you can influence people.
Yep.
And coming from consulting, you're working for big companies, a lot of big companies, and you don't have absolute power. You're basically being asked by the board or by the senior executives to get things done. And so you've got a team working on those things, but you're going to influence the senior management to do something different by the analysis you do and the ideas you come up with, not because you say this is the right answer.
Right.
You've got to prove it to those people that it's the best way to go and to change direction. In the same way in any big company, getting change made in a huge company like Siemens, we had 60, 70,000 employees in the U.S., it takes a lot of effort.
And you need their ownership.
Right.
Is what by doing your listening tour and without question.
It's not my ideas. These are you're now saying you own them, right? And you make them happen. And then as those started to become successful, more and more people wanted to participate. Hey, let me be part of that team. And then of course we celebrated the areas that did well, and those people became successful and say, hey, these 5 people were on this team. They led it. Look at the growth we've gotten because of that. Okay, now they would move on to better opportunities inside the company.
Little proof.
Right.
Proof that the team works.
Right, exactly.
That's So I remember when you first came to our board at YSU, and obviously the topic was education. And education is in a real flux in our country today and in our state, especially with demographic things. But it's not just in our state, it's in every state. And you talked a little bit about some of the things that you learned in Germany from an education standpoint, because remember the conversation was always, wow, we need more technical people, we need more 2-year colleges and this and that, and share with the viewers a little bit of what you thought were some of the positive things we could glean about building educational teams from what you learned in Germany.
Yeah, if you take a look, half the people in this country, half the high school graduates don't go to college, and half of those that do, or 40% of those that do, don't end up graduating or using their degree for whatever their career is. And a lot of people end up in careers that they might have been better off going into a technical program. And in Germany, they have just huge apprentice programs all over the country, almost every single industry and market. Even if you want to be a plumber, in 9th or 10th grade, you start working for a plumbing company. If you want to be a chef, you start working in a restaurant. And every restaurant in Germany of a certain size has to have a certain number of apprentices. So everyone understands this is the best thing for us because we're nurturing our own workforce. And not everyone likes the first apprenticeship they go into. They might do multiple apprentices, but the idea is not everyone wants to go to college and study engineering or math or whatever, right? So that's one of the things I think we're missing. When I was at Siemens in the U.S., we started doing that with community colleges around almost all of our large facilities. And it got quite a bit of attention from Capitol Hill and from governors and things because they saw that this was a way for a lot of those people that were didn't know what they wanted to do with their life. This was a way to go back and spend half the time in the classroom, half the time working and getting paid for it. Right. And then when you finish the program, your pay goes up and you've got a job, but you've already been working for us for 2 or 3 years. We had a little bit of a tough time getting a lot of U.S. companies to buy into it because, a lot of CEOs would tell me, well, when we need people for that, we just go out in the market and find them. Okay, but the problem is there's not enough of them. And so everyone's fighting over the same resources. I mean, I think you take a look at something like welding, we're short thousands of welders in this country, right? So we're importing them, right? And I think at Youngstown, I think what I saw was, and you started the Excellence Center and things around, things like 3D printing and a lot of the newer,
robotics
the robotics and sort of the new battery plant that's out outside of Youngstown now and things. Hey, the market is moving away from the old world, the old, for example, the old internal combustion engine cars. We're going to move to more hybrids and electrics. We need to have programs that will support that, right? 3D printing is becoming a big thing, right? So how do we put programs in? I think some of the programs Youngstown is, and even now with the new Gateway Community College becoming integrated into Youngstown State, I think it's a great thing because, for all those people who don't go to college, there needs to be some other alternatives. They need to find a way to develop the skill and develop the training. I think, that's one thing that Germany does really, really well. I think we do it in pockets in the U.S., but I think it can be a big opportunity. And I think, Youngstown and Youngstown State and Ohio, I think Ohio's kind of embraced that a little bit. So,
the whole workforce preparation and just that recognition that everyone on the team is critical, everyone we've got. But what I thought was intriguing way back when we first started talking about it with Germany is you said, fast forward though, a good percentage of the people that ended up owning companies or being CEO of companies did the track of the apprenticeships. Just as many as did the other track.
The CFO, Chief Financial Officer for Siemens USA, who worked very closely with me, he started off as an apprentice in a factory in Germany, working as a bookkeeper, and he learned bookkeeping, and then he kept going to school and he became the controller of a plant, and then he kept moving from job to job to job, and the next thing you know, now he never actually went and got a 4-year degree in accounting, right? But he became the CFO of a $23 billion company, part of the business. So
a little bit like Rick Frieda, our newest board member.
Yes.
Started as a tool and die maker at Comco. Today is the CEO, and probably because of what a great team member he was, and he grew through the business, and so it kind of refutes that the naysayers of having a broader technical approach and maybe getting started in some different things, the naysayers will say, well, you're putting a ceiling,
right,
on where a person can get.
Right, yeah. And in Germany, it's seen as the opposite. I mean, it's revered. These apprentice programs are revered.
Right.
And I think the way they think of it is, there's a lot of ways to get from here to where you want to be, right? And there's different paths, and not everyone has to take the same path.
Yep.
And so, a lot of people who are hugely successful started off building little businesses and building them into bigger businesses without ever having gone to get an MBA or anything like that, right? So there's a lot of different paths to take, and I think that's a good message out there for people. And especially that's also where I think the mentorship comes in. A lot of young people today need that kind of mentorship to help them. This last year or two has been a tough time for a lot of people coming out of college to find work. A lot of the tech firms have not been hiring, and a lot of the banks have not been hiring as much as they have in the past. So a lot of people say, well, I want to go into banking. Well, how do I get there? So, well, why don't you think about going into a career that's going to be useful in banking, that you can find, like, what about insurance? Have you ever thought about insurance? They're hiring. You can go to work for one of the agencies, maybe learn how to sell insurance. Those kind of things on your resume are going to help you as you go forward, right?
Yep.
Sales is always a useful tool. Everyone's got to know how to sell.
Amen.
It doesn't matter whether you're a CEO or whether you're a coach
or president.
You've got to learn how
to sell.
So think about building your toolkit now.
Yep.
And that's where the mentorship comes in. I think a lot of young people don't get the kind of mentorship, or they don't pay attention to it. But I think that's also part of whatever organization you're in, building your team, making sure that the people who need it are getting the right kind of mentorship. And for example, at Siemens, we had very formal programs. In Booz Allen, every partner was expected to have half a dozen people that they were mentoring, from the very new people out of college to people who had been there 10, 15 years, right? To help them think about, how do you become more successful in the company, and how do you be more successful in your career, even if it's not here, if it's somewhere else.
And the skill that we have to make sure we're mentoring is team. I bring up Rick Frieda because he's such a great, there's no way he goes from tool and die maker to CEO if he weren't the right kind of team member, because he probably had 16 other jobs along the way, right, that the team needed. Hey teammates, I want to tell you about a project we're working on with Youngstown State University. One of the ways Ellen and I have decided to give back is through the Tressel Institute for Leadership and Teamwork. We've collected a set of successful business and nonprofit leaders to serve as guest servant leaders in partnership with the Sokolov Honors College to teach university students teamwork, leadership, and personal skills. We teach from a foundation built on gratitude, excellence, hope, love, and selflessness. If you're a young person or parent helping to search for a unique college experience, you can learn more at tresselinstitute.ysu.edu or ysu.edu. Links will be provided in the show notes. Quick switch. Switzerland. Anything you learned there from a team building standpoint?
I was a pretty low-level person. I was just starting my career when I got there, and one thing I know they were very big on was trust and loyalty. So when I got over there, they spent a lot of time telling me about the history of the company and how the company was founded and organized, and how important it was to the economy, and how we expect you to know this and to understand where the company came from and what it does and how important it is, et cetera, which I thought was interesting because I was going to spend a couple years working there and go back to the U.S. But to this day, I still remember a lot about Brown Boveri, which has now become ABB Assea Brown Boveri. It's a huge, one of the biggest companies in Switzerland. But they were very, very proud of their company and very proud of what they've achieved. And every business unit I worked with and every team I was on there, you could just see that pride coming out of those people, and they expected you to also be proud of the company and the work you were doing, and they're very quality focused. The Swiss are very, and the Germans are as well, very quality focused. So sometimes maybe it gets to be a little too expensive, but it works.
Well, it's interesting you say it, because on our winner's manual that we had with our players, we had the word team in big block letters, and it's all about the team. But right under it, we had, with tradition comes responsibility. And it sounds to me like that's what...
Right. You're coming to work for a great company, and we want it to be a great 100 years from now.
Right.
So you need to buy into that and understand what makes us a great company, and you need to help make it better and provide that legacy and things. So that was kind of one thing I took away from there. Yeah.
So let me switch here now. We can't not talk about your philanthropic work, your learning from those nonprofit. It's a whole different world when you're working with a Sarasota Memorial who's trying to develop, or if you're working with YSU with the philanthropic. Anything that you could share with the viewers that you've learned from that part of the world, the nonprofit part of the world, and building teams?
Yeah, one thing that's interesting is, the boards of a lot of these charitable organizations oftentimes are people who are big donors, and they've taken a big interest in whether it's a hospital or a theater or the arts or whatever. They've taken a big interest in it, and they've donated money, and they get a spot on the board. And so one of the difficult things in these organizations, and I think the full-time directors of these nonprofits experience, is how do I channel that energy and that horsepower? I mean, a lot of these boards just have tremendous experience and horsepower on them, but how do I get them to help me focus on the things that need to get done? Giving money is one of them, but there's a lot of other things that have to happen in terms of building the brand and connecting into the community, and they got lots of human resource and training. If you can channel that, a lot of the issues they're dealing with, these boards can help with. And so one of the things I try to do on some of these boards is try to get people to understand you're not just showing up as an individual, make a few comments, have lunch, and head out the door. It's, let's really understand their problems, and how do we as a team put those issues on the table and tackle them as a group. because when you bring all of that horsepower together, it's amazing what you can do. I know on the Rollins College board I'm on, one of the schools, not the liberal arts school, but one of the schools, was seeing like declining enrollment. And, we talk about it at some of the board meetings. And I said, look, I'm willing to step up and work with that organization, but I need some help from other people here on the team who have different experiences to come together and really focus on this issue, as opposed to having them present to us, make a few comments, and they go away. It's not getting any better. How do we help make it better?
Yep.
And how do we work as a team to do that? So I think that's a good message for a lot of these directors and board members of these. It's if you're just going to sign up to, you give money and that's going to be helpful, and you want to show up and want to meet some of the people and things, but the more you can get involved by getting involved in the committees, picking out an issue that they're dealing with that you can really help with. It doesn't always have to be raising more money. It can be lots of things about there. Maybe they're building a new facility, maybe they're developing training programs, more educational programs, whatever. Where can you really jump in and help bring your expertise to make that better and be part of a team? And a lot of these organizations, the people in there, they need development. They need to learn how to work on a team and really to help mentor and coach them. And so that's one of the ways I often on some of these boards will get involved in a project kind of outside the board with some people within the organization, not to take credit for it, just to help them understand this is the kind of work you need, analysis you need to do to basically convince the board and the directors here that this is something we need to do going forward. That's not going to happen on its own, and we've got to do the right analysis to demonstrate this is the right way to think about doing this, whatever the issue or the problem is. And usually when they do that and then they present to the board, they're always amazed. Wow, the reception I got, the people commenting on my report and the action, the decisions that come out of that. So I find myself feeling good about giving back by helping to mentor some of these people who've never had that kind of, they haven't had that kind of apprenticeship in doing analytics or doing a strategy or whatever. And it's something I try to do on almost all of the nonprofit boards I'm on, is get involved in some important strategic issue, working with other members of the board, but also members of the organization.
Well, I can speak to that firsthand, because that's really what I thought you brought to our board, was not just your expertise of being around other boards and business and so forth, but that example for our entire board. Really, our board is kind of like a non-paid consulting firm.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we're going to double your salary this year from 0 to 0 and have 10 times more meetings. But that's, to me, been the value of the folks on our board. I mean, I don't want to just name one or two of them, because every one of them brings a different expertise. And I think one of the things that, when our board recognized we have 9 governor-appointed members, that we needed to bring a couple other people who could bring some expertise and some example, and you were the first one, and that truly did that for us. Let me ask you one other thing, probably you never dreamed I'd ask you, is, it relates to team. I know you have gotten to know the bourbon industry a little bit.
Yeah.
And
I did not expect you to ask me.
No, right, exactly. And so, what have you learned about team when it comes to creating a bourbon brand, and what has surprised you about that amazing team?
Yeah. I got to know, working in private equity, I got to know one of the people I worked with at the private equity firm's family has an old company that's been distilling whiskeys for a long, long time. And I got invited up to spend a day there to show me the operation. And they have a concept there where it's kind of farm to bottle. They basically grow the corn and the rye and everything within a certain number of miles around there, and then they come and they harvest it and they bring it in and they process it all right there into their whiskeys. And just understanding how that whole supply chain worked and all the people that are involved, and then the whole bottling and marketing and branding. It's not a huge company; it's a small company, so a lot of people are double-hatted, and you have some people that have pretty deep business experience, but a lot of other people that are just kind of learning how that business works. And I thought it was just fascinating. They've built a brand where, the average bottle sells for over $100 a bottle. It's a very profitable business. It's kind of one of those homegrown businesses, but just watching them as you go around, you can tell that there's a woman who actually runs it. When she walks around, she knows every single detail of that business. She knows everyone who's working there. She knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing. You know? And she can walk around and tell when things are working well and when they're not working well. She'd say, "Excuse me for a minute, Eric, I've got to go do something." And she would go in and you could see them talking to her about something that they were doing in the process. So, so even small businesses like that, they need leadership, but they're apprenticing a whole host of very young people. The organization was very young in how to make world-class whiskey, and then how to market and brand that. And every time I go to some bar somewhere, I was in Nevada, in Las Vegas, a year ago, and I was at a bar, and I said, I see you don't have any Hill Rock bourbon, and they said, no, but I'd love to get some. Do you have a way that we could get some of that? And I said, I texted her right there, and I said, I'm in Las Vegas, and I said, well, who's the distributor you're using? They told me the distributor. I said, this distributor. She said, okay, I'll call them, but make sure he tells them that he wants some of our product, right? Right. And so it's kind of interesting to watch.
Well, what made me think of that is just a couple weeks ago, Ellen and I were over in West Virginia at the Greenbrier, doing a charity event called Game Changers, which was an extraordinary event, opioid and fentanyl awareness education programs, and you know how that's hit our country, especially Appalachia and so forth. And one of my friends, when Ellen went out golfing, I'm not the greatest golfer, so I didn't make the cut, so I didn't get onto the charity golf outing. So one of my buddies, who happens to have a place in Greenbrier, said, "Hey, come over and look at this barrel making. They have a tour." And so I thought it was a tourist thing where you could tour, kind of like you do the Lexington, the Bourbon Trail and all that. So I thought we were going on a tour. Well, it turns out that he has equity in the company, but they build the barrels. Now, to see, barrels, the white oak barrels. Yeah. To see the teamwork that went in to, now there's a lot of automation today. It used to be guys just with hammers. But I was, I love teams, and I love to see humming teams, and just to see how and I didn't realize, I learned something that you only use a barrel once, and then they sell it to make scotch and other things, but a bourbon barrel can only be used once. So I was thinking of you when I was going over there, because for all the conversations we've had over the years, the one you were most excited about was when you came back from that bourbon experience.
I was fascinated by that. And it's funny, those barrels, they have only one life as a bourbon barrel, but they have a second life and a third life and a fourth. There's a whole business around moving these barrels. And they take them over to France and they use
Scotland.
It's an interesting business.
Well, this has been a blast. Yeah. And you've given us some great insight, and for all of our viewers, we appreciate you taking part with us, being part of our team, and you know what, you ought to comment, because some of the things that we add to our question list with our guests on the episode are some of the questions that you have about building your team. So with that, Eric Spiegel, appreciate you so much, appreciate your friendship and sharing your wisdom with our group, and as you all know, it's all about the team. That was a heck of an episode with Eric Spiegel. It's amazing. I've learned so much with every single one of our guests, and it's been a learning experience for me, and I hope it has for you. And based on some of the comments and questions that we've been getting, it's added value, and that's really what we're here for. We're going to take a break. We're going to take that 4th of July week off and hopefully have the chance to spend time with family and friends. We hope you get to do the same. It's a special week in our nation's history. When we come back from that break, we'll be periodically answering some of the questions you've had perhaps responding to some of the comments. And our next guest on the episode after our 4th of July break will be Maurice Claret. What a great story Maurice has been. So proud of him.